Welcome to the virtual studio groups, where we get a glimpse into the artist's minds within the 10 minutes. I'm Gordana, and this is Boshko, and we have a pleasure to talk to Genevieve. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and your work, and we can just start with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's really lovely to be here and talk to you. So I'm an abstract painter from the UK, and my painting story really started in Belgrade, where I met you. And this piece behind me is one of my final pieces from Belgrade. It's called Ephemera, and it was that idea of leaving somewhere, this kind of change point, how fleeting things are. So yeah, and all my work is very connected to our experience of time and life, and this kind of, yeah, it's all about life and the energetic exchanges in life.
Amazing. And is there any topic that you would like to talk today in particular, or we can just talk about you can maybe show us some of the photos from your website or Instagram, and we can go briefly through the latest works.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the series that I'm working on at the moment, which is called Sensitive Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
These pieces are really connected to water and our it's about this idea of water as a spiritual connection point for us as well as a physical one. So there are these forms that the way that water moves is echoed in our own bodies, and I've extrapolated from it, so this idea of God, what if water was God, and kind of it's connected to also my own recent experience of loss and grief, and how I read around grief that we hold grief in our lungs, and that I feel like I think grief sometimes feels like you're drowning. And so it was kind of fascinating, this idea of, because it's so powerful, and then within that there's this sense that if grief feels like drowning, and then grief is also love with nowhere to go, is another phrase that I've heard, and then also this idea of God and water, and so this full circle of this kind of complete cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And one of the other things in this book, Sensitive Chaos, which is where the series title came from, he talks about water is always trying to return to its whole form. So when you watch water falling, it falls and then becomes circles. And it's the same in patterns of rivers. There are these I can't remember what the official term is now, but when water moves out, it will create these little circular separate forms. It's constantly creating this kind of round, soft forms. So that's been very present in my work.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how it's connected to nature, but then also it reflects on your own life and your emotions, and so everything is intertwined. Like for me, I have similar kind of the starting point, but then it interprets in a different way. So I love how we have some similarities, so we can talk to each other and we can understand each other, but then the output is completely different. But
Yeah.
also what I love about your work, because I'm following it over is it 10 years now already that
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
work. So it's been an amazing journey, to know all these processes, and we had many talks. I love the element of performance that you're starting to have, because you have been present on Instagram for so many years now, and you develop such a great confidence to show your work, but then also to do your work in front of the camera. So I believe
Yeah.
that became part of your work, and it is a performance in a way.
Yeah. I think it's a real treat to talk to you about this, actually, because you remind me of that aspect of my practice, because obviously, we've done performative work together as well,
Yeah.
before, we did that piece in Belgrade with, which was very directly connected to performance. And I sometimes forget, I forget that that it is performative, and I get something from that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when I remind myself and then share the work, share the process, and put the camera up, and it is like having another person in the space almost as I'm working.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is so physical. The you know the work that I do, yeah, it's a physical process, and at the moment I'm working larger as well. So
Mm-hmm.
these kind of long linear pieces that I've been working on, where I really can move across and then back, and then I'm moving in. So there's this constant forwards and backwards motion, as well as the sideways, which is connected again to this sensitive chaos in the forms in water.
Yeah, yeah, engaging the body, it also
Mm.
feels a little bit like it always reminded me of calligraphy in a way, because
Mm.
it has like this element, like in this, remember that old movie Hero, when they're doing like this big calligraphy on the floor
Yeah.
with something that looks like a broom, but it's
Yeah.
a big brush. Like I was always fascinating with this kind of engagement between the body and like how the flow is transformed with. So you have this element in your work.
Mm.
And then also like how the color palette was evolving over time. Like it became like more subtle and more complex, and the compositions, like it's becoming like more and more complex. And it's been like fascinating to follow all that. Like, do you see this transformation over time, or how do you feel about it?
I think it's one of those things that sort of slips in, and then I suddenly notice it. So
Mm.
I'm always looking for, in the pieces, I'm always looking for this harmony and this space
Mhm.
almost, where um I'm aware of the mark making, but I'm not trying to push it too hard, or trying to manipulate the forms too much. It's not, I'm not painting a specific thing, so I'm
Mhm.
not looking at like light and shadow, but then I am trying to get this intuitive sense of like the weight and the harmony and the I have noticed recently I'm more prepared or more confident with getting that nuance on a smaller and smaller scale, as well as these large forms,
Mhm.
which I think creates another language within it. And again, with the palette, it's the same thing.
Mhm.
My palette's really drawn from light. So um, initially, like this piece,
Mhm.
this kind of very simple blues and oranges actually came from the streetlights in Belgrade.
Mhm.
So at night when the trees are lit and you get that the sky has still got that slightly silvery blue, and then there's the orange of the artificial light. But the way
Aha.
that it hits the forms is always just I was always really drawn to it.
Aha.
But the light here is much slower. So unlike in Belgrade, where like at 9 o'clock it was like, right, it's almost like the sun was like, yeah, lights out, I'm over now, it's nighttime. Whereas here, I mean, in winter it gets dark, but it's like it takes so long to get dark. And I think maybe that kind of allowing more of the light into my, like it's fed into my work in some way.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Like you were the first one like to bring this to the attention, like the light in Belgrade. I wasn't aware of that. Now in Barcelona, like the day is longer and the light goes
Yeah,
slower.
the
So I
slow.
always remember you saying this, how the light in Belgrade just gets shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't know. Like that's an interesting. Now I can see it when you're pointing out the lights in Belgrade and this. Like I can see the contrast, and I can recognize this. And like all of this that you were saying, it reminded me of this Kaizen, the Japanese term Kaizen. It's like
Okay.
slowly improving the technique, like gradual improvements over time, and then
Ah.
like they say, like in comparison to the Western culture where we all seek for innovation and like something new all the time, like
Mm.
this Kaizen method is like making small changes over time, and this will bring improvement, and then like it's gradual growth and this kind of thing. So I
Mm.
recognize this in your work. That's why I was asking you, like it's not like sudden changes, it's like changing over time, that like even you're not like aware until the change already happened, and then you start
Yeah.
noticing it. So I find that very beautiful. And then like, since you have been documenting for so long, like when you go through your Instagram, for example, you can follow these changes over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. And returns as well. So I think often there's almost like there'll be a retreat. So there'll be a kind of growth, and then sometimes I'll retreat back to something really simple, really, but again, it's in the way that we always are in our lives. Even when we come back to the grooves of the things that we know the best, we're always slightly different. And so I think with with my art practice, I've realized those rhythms exist as well. So I'll pull back into it. I did a few pieces earlier this year where I pulled right back again to this very pared back palette and very simple movements.
Mm-hmm.
But within that, there was this kind of transparency that hadn't been there before, and there was subtle movements in there that couldn't have existed before all these other pieces had come into existence, if that makes sense, and then informed my movement. But I
Yeah.
love that there's a word for it.
One of the question is, what do you think it means to be a successful artist? Because I consider you a successful artist because you're actually one of the few artists that I know that are making money out of your art. And I find that fascinating. I'm always using you as an example. So I think like any interpretation of this that you give us, it would be better than anyone already gave me. So like whatever
Okay.
you cannot go wrong. I know there is no perfect answer, so whatever you say, it will be perfect.
Okay. Ooh, so I think a successful artist, I think it's a balance. I think it's almost exactly what that word describes, is this balance between innovation and, like, you have to stay curious about your practice and you have to be prepared to challenge yourself. Um, but you also have to be your own champion, you know. And I think that's one thing I learned, and interestingly learned it from living abroad whilst trying to make a career as an artist. And I'd done, there's a phrase that Jim Carrey says about his dad. So his dad was a musician and an accountant, and his dad pursued accountancy first because it made money and it was a serious thing, but he wasn't very good at it. And I think Jim Carrey once said, you can be really bad at something you hate, so like why not try to do the thing you love, right? And it just really stuck with me. So I think success is kind of keeping going at that thing that you love in some form, and being your own champion, and also staying curious about your process and your practice, staying excited by it.
Nice. I love it. And what do you think it makes an artwork a good artwork?
Ooh. For me, it's when I don't know how I made it.
Uh-huh.
Like, I look at it and I'm like, where did you come from?
Uh-huh.
And I know it, I know I did it, but if I, even if I retraced my exact steps, I couldn't find the same piece,
Mm-hmm.
the same object, the same creation wouldn't come out of it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's a singularity.
What about when you look at other people's artwork? Would you use the same criteria, or would you judge by some of the, like how we all are learning about visual elements of composition and this and that, but then like there is always something more that we cannot be.
Yeah, I think it is that. It's I think if a piece charms you, like if it holds you, no matter whether that's music or dance or a photograph or a piece of, somebody finding an object and placing it just perfectly in a context, or even even good conceptual art, if it has a kind of grace that you couldn't, once you see it, it, but you couldn't work out how it came to be, if that makes sense. Like, because people always say, well, I could have done that about certain,
Yeah.
particularly like installations, and it's like, but you didn't though. And now that it's there, you're like, oh, like there's
Yeah.
something I could have done that. Like there's a yearning, I don't know, connection. I think that's kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, kind of trying to what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there is no one answer to this. That's why I was wondering, like, to ask different artists. Then, like, maybe
Yeah,
like over time we get a whole picture, like from like small pieces from different perspectives, because it's so hard to find words.
yeah. We'll get a lovely encyclopedia of ideas. If
Yeah,
nothing, if not any deep truth, we'll
yeah,
get fragments, right? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is no one answer.
yeah,
Like we also have different experiences. So then, like, and in different periods of time, like we also have different ways of judging. So, like, if you asked
yeah,
me 10 years ago, probably I would have a different answer than now. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
that's changing. Like how my focus is changing, that's also changing.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's true, and I think, yeah. Again, we're always changing. We're always changing all the time. Everything is shifting us slightly one way or the other, and yeah, even though we come back to rhythms and grooves, and we are cyclical, but we have pulses. I think. Did
yeah.
you see that amazing image of the photosynthesis on the Earth?
No?
There's a science conference happening in Bradford at the moment, and they've satellite imagery has shown that the way that the Earth photosynthesizes is like a heartbeat.
Oh,
It's
wow.
amazing. It's breathtaking. It's like it's a pulse of light that happens, which is recording the photosynthesis across the world.
Wow.
Like, yeah,
I
it's
have something to say. I remember watching you work, creating those pieces, and it's almost like I like the movement because it's like you're breaking the surface. Like there is the beginning, like the canvas is there, and there are colors, and then you start working on it. It's almost like literally breaking the surface because the surface of something new is sometimes it feels impenetrable, almost like a empty page or something like
yeah,
to go to push through it in order to make something. And remember you doing
Mm,
your movement, and then that's why it reminded me of performative practice, like
mhm,
almost like a dance in a sense, like when you're doing that, it has the
mm,
element of
mhm,
forcefulness. That's what got when
mhm,
you said about Hero,
mhm,
the movie. They're using swords or they're using
mhm,
uh,
yeah,
calligraphy. Yeah, but because if you are doing only painting or drawing, you're moving on the surface, but you're moving just on the surface. But if you're using trust or swords or calligraphy, you're going forwards also.
yeah,
It's also the
mhm,
breaking of the surface, and your paintings remind me always on that.
mhm.
If there is a darkness, you penetrate that with your
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and you create shapes and you create those kind of patterns. So I like that. Yeah, really.
thank you.
What's your impulse? For me, from all these years of doing martial arts, I'm left with only the drive of repeating certain movements that are on their literally they have no purpose anymore for me. Like after so many decades, they're just the thing that I do and this type of movements that I do, and it's definitely drive on the level of drive for me now. And
Yeah,
when I do them, that's why I got to notice that like. I
like breathing.
it's yeah, I
Yeah,
do that because I have to do it. It's like, and I became good at it, and they're completely devoided from the initial purpose. Like, for they were supposed to be doing something, in martial arts, but now they're doing nothing except for being it what they are.
yeah.
What's with your movement? Where does it come from?
I mean,
Go or aim at. Yeah.
yeah, I suppose it's got a similar,
Mhm.
I don't know, I feel like they're echoes of something.
Mhm,
Like I move a lot when I took, like I move, I always have to move when I'm explaining myself or when I'm communicating. And I feel like almost with the paintings, it's like taking out the words and
Mhm.
just they're these like echoes, these songs or poems or, but yeah, a bit like you, they're kind of compulsive. Certainly the first marks. I've realized again over time looking at them, I have this same
mhm.
starting points, and if I can force it to a different way, and it's okay, but it's like within my paintings there's always this this certain rhythm, or this that has to be in there in a way, and it's unconscious, but it doesn't really serve. I don't know what it's saying, but I don't know if I've got as far as you where it's gone through this state of honing it, because the impulse is coming from a different, I'm almost coming from the other end. I'm almost coming from it having no meaning to maybe it having meaning, whereas yours had meaning and now it's become impulse.
Yeah.
So
Is
yeah,
the time limit to doing that for me, because it comes on the level of drive, and then if of course I do it, then I become self-conscious of it. So I cannot do it anymore because I start repeating myself, and that's a problem. You wanna, so for me, there is a time limit if I want to do anything in art with that. So I don't want to prepare. I just want to do it, and it will last for a certain amount of time. It's not that long, and I don't want to repeat that immediately. I want to take time to cool myself off from that, and then I'm fresh again. I can let the drive do its own thing, and I can be surprised. I can be just the element to it.
Yeah, it's that it's impulse, not artifice. Yeah.
But like when you two talk about this, like it feels like there is like different sensibilities of artists. Like for example, for me, this feels in a way so different, like from my experience, because like I get so bored so easily that like any repetition, like I have to force myself to go through the project like within the same manner. And a lot of times like I do parallel projects because like I get bored of this one and then I have to do parallelly another one so that I can continue in a long run to finish the first one that I started. So I have like this slow movement because I'm working on different things. Yeah. Do you have like what's your experience? Do you have a need to do something else parallel to this, or
No, I am a real like
you
I think
enjoy
I get really into one thing and it will be that thing
Yeah.
fulfills
forever
you?
almost. Like I do I grow things. I think that's my other art form. Is like I've started growing like my garden, and I'm obsessed with like plants and growing plants and like watching them grow and like growing from seed and this kind of. But in my practice, I'm so slow to make change. Well, it feels like I'm slow to make changes. Like they're minute changes that happen. So I suppose this is now 10 years of this body of work, but I still find it so exciting when I'm working on something, even though it's just the blue was changed very slightly, or there's a different transparency, or there's a smaller movement, or it's just
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a certain spice in performance. Is different the type kind of breed, because for example, if you use, let's say, not artists, maybe actors and theaters, they will perform the same thing over and over again. But every once in a while, in that playing the role, there will be one night, 2 nights, a performance, like moments of performance, like which are different than just playing the role. They're playing the role, they're repeating the stuff, but then the performance just breaks, like your paintings. You break the surface of your role into the performance, and that's very different thing that just repeating stuff. While you're repeating, you're actually like, it's almost like uh, cutting the ties to yourself in order to be able to perform at the moment if it happens. And if it happens, you will catch it. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But every once in a while, it does.
And it feels like you have the worlds within the world to explore. So that's why it's keeping you engaged, because like you see more ways to explore this thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I've always been like that, not one trick pony. I'm just really slow with, I get obsessed about things and then that's the only thing I can think about.
No, I don't think it's slow. I think it's just a different approach. That's why it's so fascinating, like to, like it's so different from me, but then like two of us are so different, and then when we discuss, like, I get insights that I wouldn't
Yeah.
initially. So interesting when we get to talk to each other and like to try to understand what is the other one experiencing. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking you all these detailed questions, like, and how this and that.
Yeah. But I mean, I always love talking to you because I feel like your mind is so, your imagination and the way you see the world is so like compelling to me. Like I love it. I always come away from conversations with you feeling like I like everything's a bit brighter and like and more interesting than it was before I spoke to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I think
You should come to virtual studio groups when you have time, because
I know.
the kind of conversations that we're having, and
Yeah.
everyone are so lovely and open. Like, we're building this culture where people can talk in this way. So we're still small, and this is the way that we want to keep it, like to have people that are in friendly environment where it's safe that you can talk in this way.
This is the unstable structures. This was the previous series. Again, like so this is since I moved back to the UK and the light has shifted more into this kind of warmer and more nuanced light. But then this was a piece where I kind of returned, like I was saying, this idea of returning to forms that feel comfortable, like this palette and these forms, but it had shifted already. There's more of this subtle movement and transparency. This was starting to work on these centrifugal pieces, which again I really love. And this is this kind of returning to a whole. I remember you saying about my work that you felt like some of them were like little angels or little creatures. And so I feel like with these centrifugal forms, like they're like the cells that make up the rest of the world that I'm in. But they can also be planets. I don't know, kind of. Yeah, so this was 2023 into 2024, that series. Yeah, so this was 2021. So there are forms that I come back to again and again. And then there are these little bits that sneak in for each series, or here this kind of these little like sea creature kind of forms. And this was one of those pieces where I just didn't know how I'd done it. And so I'm always trying to somehow recreate it. So I come back to it occasionally.
Yeah, it's beautiful. How long does it usually take for one series of painting?
So because of the layering process, they take between 2 to 4 weeks, really. Just
For
because
one.
so I'm always working on more than one at once.
Uh-huh.
Because each layer has to dry, but the actual process of creating the final layers is quite quick. It's quite immediate. I don't paint slowly, but there's a lot of looking. But this one, though it's not radically different from anything else, something about it was a really quick piece, and there's something about the rawness of it, and the title came really quickly. So I don't title work. I don't really title the pieces before I'm making them. I have the theme in my head, this idea of, so yielding was all about softness as a form of strength. So that's the kind of overarching thing that I'm like carrying with me when I'm making the pieces. This one is called deliquescence, and deliquescence is the process of a physical object in nature becoming liquid. So it's like mushrooms when they melt, basically it's melting, but it's living organisms generally deliquesce. I don't know, just something about that word and this form and the piece, it came together really quickly and beautifully.
I was wondering, like, when you say you have a theme in your mind, how usually like you're working on one theme? Is it like months or like less or more?
It's usually over the course of about 12 months, and then a new theme will emerge as well. So yeah, they're usually between 12 to 18 months each series, and they bleed into each other. That's the sort of skeleton of my process. So this is this is 2 layers in to a painting.
This also
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, this also looks great.
I like each form, each layer to feel complete in its own right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, so we'll link your Instagram and a website so people can see more of your work. And then because it's really hard to show everything and like so much, and it's hard to make a selection now what to show and not, but just to intrigue people to see more and explore more of your work. And if anyone wants to buy something, we can also point them out. Because like yeah, we did maybe next time we can talk about art fairs and your experience about that because
yeah, I mean, if it would be useful to your listeners, yeah, absolutely. The other side of art making is sharing the work and going, yeah, traveling around to sell it. And yeah.
Yes, that's fascinating topic, and we don't know many people who are so successful in it, so you're perfect to talk about it. So maybe we can schedule next time to talk only about that.
Yeah, about the business side.
And then I will attach all the links. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. I love your work, as you know, and I hope to see you soon and we do this again and talk about more topics.
Yeah, that'd be great. It's been really lovely.
Yes, thank you so much.
Too.
Thank you.